I've reached out to you a while back, a long time ago, to ask you to come on the podcast, and I framed it to say I like speaking to incredible people. And your instant response was it was a nice declinement. I don't know how you say it, but it was your exact response was, "I don't find myself that incredible, so I'm going to turn it down." Which I loved the response so much. I was a bit pissed off, but I loved the response so much. And when I asked you again to come back on when I saw you had started your own podcast, your words were, "I'll come back on as long as you address me as a regular guy," which which is even more perfect. And I will do so to the best of my ability, even though I might not be able to help myself, because I think there's something special about you. And I say that because when I came across your videos online, there was something so different about the way that you conducted yourself as opposed to any other quote unquote online influencer personality or whatever it might be. Because there was a kind of a palpable realness to your tone, to your mannerisms, which came through to me straight away. That you actually meant what you said and you wanted a conversation and you wanted to help people in that way. And I wanted to first just ask you whether or not that kind of mindful approach is something you did on purpose. Is it something that comes naturally to you, or is it something that you've worked on for a while previously? Because I know running itself helps a lot of this, especially with the mindfulness. But is that something you think about, or?
I mean, I appreciate all the compliments, firstly. What a way to
Well
start an
deserved.
episode. um, it is definitely conscious. Like I'm trying as hard as I possibly can, and always have tried as hard as I possibly can to be me. I think that comes from, firstly, just a sort of I just know that content does well when people are authentic. I think people have an innate ability to recognize inauthenticity, and whether it's, I don't know, maybe it's like a survival technique or something, but we just know, you can just tell when someone's lying or when they're sort of acting or being a bit fake. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that everyone who gains a shit ton of followers is real.
I know what
Quite
you
the
mean. You
opposite.
can tell.
But you can
You can.
tell,
There's a little
and it's
something there.
yeah, and it's something I hate. I really I cringe at it when when you can tell that someone feels like they're on camera, if that makes sense. Like they're filming themselves and they're acting like they are filming themselves. And I think it kind of, in a weird way, disconnects the viewer from the creator. And I wanted to, as much as I possibly could, actually speak to the viewer specifically. So the whole purpose of my content was to help people, right? It's just to try and help people with their running and fitness, and I think that was the original goal, was just to help people with their running, give them tips and advice. Um, but also, I thought it was more powerful to do so by actually trying to speak to the individual that's viewing it. I think you're always speaking to one person, because you're pretty much never gonna be you're pretty much never gonna be speaking to a crowd through social media. You are if you have lots of followers, of course, but what I really mean by that is there is only ever one individual holding a device, and you're only ever speaking to that one individual. So if you can speak to that one individual and that's replicated across all of your followers, then I think it connects better. And so it has been intentional to try and be myself, and I know it's intentional because there are times where I'm like running with my camera, running with my phone doing a video, and I will say a line, I'll say a phrase with the wrong tonality or inclination or something like that, and I'll just think that doesn't sound like me, and so I'll redo it until it really just sounds like me. It sounds like I'm talking to someone in a pub or whatever. So I'm really try hard to try and sound natural, and I've even recorded stories or videos before where I've chatted to the camera, and for whatever reason, I've been a bit self-conscious, and I've looked back at the video. I'm like, oh, I look a bit self-conscious, or I look a bit conscious of the fact that I'm on camera. And so I don't post it because I'm just like, I look like I'm faking it. I look like I'm acting, and I don't see myself there. So I only ever I try as hard as I can to only post when I see myself, or really try and be real in myself, because I think that people deserve authentic, real advice, and there's a lot of fake stuff on social media, of course, as we all know. And so, yeah, as part of it, a part of it is also just trying to break through the noise of social media. There's a lot of noise, a lot of people doing the same thing, a lot of especially in the fitness space. There's a lot of the same stuff, and I think that creates an opportunity for people who are willing to be themselves on social media. And I think we're seeing a bit of like an uptick of that amongst fitness influencers. I think there's a lot of people out there now who are doing extremely well on social media because they are being honest, because they are kind of showing the honest side of what it means to live a healthy and fit lifestyle. And I think that's resonating more with a lot of people. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just what I see, but I'm seeing a lot of ridicule of the old traditional fitness types, if
Yes.
that makes sense. There's a lot
Yes.
of kind of backlash against the fake fitness world, which I love, because it needs to be shunned. It needs to be sort of shut down because it's just not real. It doesn't help anyone really. There's some aspects of, you can aspire to be a certain physique, or you can aspire to do certain things, but you have to do that in the right way. And no one needs me to tell them that there's a big problem with body dysmorphia and self-worth in the fitness industry. So yeah, I think it's an element of trying to cut through the noise, and I think the best way to cut through the noise is to be your unique self, and to kind of give people what you always wanted, if that makes sense. I always sort of resonated more with the creators that were themselves and a bit more kind of down to earth and frank, and I try and be myself as much as I possibly can on social media in that way.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I see it with through yourself and through your content in particular. And when it comes to that being yourself, having that core element of you come through, as you mentioned about you've recorded stuff and just not liked it, I've done the exact same thing. I used to do intros for all of my podcasts previously. But every single time I listened to the intro, I was like, oh, there's something there. Like, it's my voice. It's still me. It's me on camera. But I know that it's not actually me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's something where even through other than the professional top level actors, where you can't tell if it's them, they're trained professionals at that. Through social media, where it's just anybody doing that, it's very easy to see, and it's almost coming to become that trend. Everyone can see it now. Everyone can see that that's not what anybody wants. It's not what people see. It's not what people like. And that audience capture stuff, they feel cheated and feel that they are being ripped off by this person who's just trying to get their attention for their own ego. But I also believe that audience captures and being that person on camera cannot happen for a person who actively puts themselves in that position, unless they have trained themselves in their mind and their essence to see that, to take their ego out of the equation on a day-to-day basis, even when they're off camera. And with your running in particular, because everyone knows obviously the mental benefits to running and the health benefits and all sorts, and you don't need to particularly talk about them. But I wanted to ask yourself, because you've been running now for what is it now, 12 years, you say?
Yeah,
roughly.
Like yeah.
And have you noticed a difference in how that has brought a more of a mindful approach to your day-to-day life? Because that's something that's really important to me, is that staying healthy for the mental benefit and the mindfulness benefit, and being able to see myself and a lot of traits and how I can be a better person. Is that something that you've noticed with your running or have done purposely through your running, or even just as a byproduct whilst you were looking at something else?
Yes, for sure. Um, I think you touched on something that I can't get off my mind actually just a second ago, which is like the sort of it might be the running that's helped me to I don't know be a bit more comfortable in my own skin, but I actually think one advantage I sort of have. I think this is a really interesting thing, right? So one advantage I sort of have, I guess, with the social media thing is that I didn't really start social media until I was in my mid to late 20s. Um, I was never really big into it in my like early 20s, in my teens and early 20s. I just posted like anyone else, like I'm in the club and I'm posting stupid stuff at uni or whatever. But I definitely wasn't like a content creator. I wasn't creating anything that I thought would go further than my friends and family and people that follow me because I met them. So I think there's some advantage in that because I have met very young quote unquote influencers, and it's a crazy world. And I just don't think they have necessarily have the head for it. I think it's we're talking about people who are 20, 21 years old with 130,000 followers on Instagram, with each post reaching tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people that they don't know. That is a mad thing. And I think that
How do you
can
think you realize it when you're younger?
no,
At all?
I mean, no. I think, and even you'd say, oh, well, they're in their 20s, they're an adult, they can deal with it. I mean, you have people who are in their teens with like a shit ton of followers, and I just think it's pretty dangerous world to be in if you're not pretty sort of comfortable with yourself. If you're insecure in any sort of way, I just don't think you should be posting all that much on social media. Anyway, that's like I guess a bit of a side topic. I think like for me, I
No, by all
started
means, we can go into it.
posting. Yeah, I started posting when I was a bit more kind of I've been through a bit of life, I guess. And so and I'd done it privately. So and the whole intention with my social media was not to be a lifestyle influencer, but to influence people in a positive way and help actually just offer information and educate people when it comes to running and fitness in the gym and all that good stuff. Um, in in terms of how I think running may have helped me in my mind. I mean, this is a huge one for me personally. Personally, it's like the biggest reason why I run is the psychological benefits. I I've always had quite a stressy head, to be honest. I think like as a young as a young teen and in my teens, I've always been quite an overthinker. Have always had a tendency towards anxious thoughts, and it's never been all that debilitating. Like I've never been in a situation where I haven't been able to muster up the sort of courage to get out of bed or whatever. Never been that low, but I definitely have had tendencies where I've been pretty down and just had sort of negative thought cycles. And running has always been something that has been able to break through that quite a lot. Just the simplicity of the daily practice of running, going out for a run, clearing the head. Everyone talks about it like it is a great head clearer. A lot of people say it's just the best form of exercise for them to clear their head. It's not easy, so it's a challenge to even sort of get to a point where you can run consistently for half an hour or so if you're new to running. It can be really challenging for anyone, depending on what sort of challenge you're, building up to. But most importantly, the daily practice of running really helps me. Like I said to you this morning, just as you were sort of confirming the time we we're meeting. Yeah, I'm just heading out for my morning run. Like I just don't think I would. I just wouldn't feel the same as I currently do if I hadn't gone for my morning run. And sometimes I skip my morning run or I shift it to later on. Plans change, but I really love starting my day with a run because my head feels better. I feel clearer headed, and yeah, I think the mental benefits are huge. And then when it comes to the endeavor of longer distances, like ultra distances and stuff, that is, I mean, the sole reason why I do ultra running is because I'm sort of curious about the mind. It's fully an
Mm.
investigation of what, yes, my body is capable of, but what my sort of psychological limits are, where my psychological limits are, and having experiences where you have had to push through a psychological barrier that you had never pushed through before. Like you're in a physical state that you just have never been in before. You're 100k or whatever into a mountain race, and you've been going for 18 hours or something, and you've still got 2 hours left or whatever it is, and you have to keep going. And sometimes there's this unlock. You realize that you're just so much more capable than you really think you are, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think I'm always curious to see where that next level is. And every time I sign up for a race that is intimidating to me, the one thing that excites me is the prospect of being on the other side and looking back at having gone through some sort of previous limit. That's exciting to me. And there's a huge, I mean, ultra marathon runners talk about this all the time, like the benefits it has on your day to day after. I mean, realistically, it probably lasts about a week or 2 weeks, but you just feel like nothing else, like all the small stuff. You just you stop sweating the small stuff, right? All the small stuff doesn't really matter. You've just achieved something you are really proud of. You pushed through something incredibly painful. And for whatever reason, you just feel a lot calmer about all the other bullshit in your life for like 7 days. Um, and so, and I think it lasts in a small way. I think it lasts in your life overall, but there is an intense feeling of pride and having overcome something. There's an intense feeling in the kind of week after where you just like, yeah, nothing matters. I'm all good. I've just run 140k. I'm good. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but I think it is. I think it is something about the psyche. You just feel calmer about things, and I think that, yeah, running's powerful, man. I wouldn't ever doubt anyone who claims some magic power that came from running. I'd say, yeah, it probably makes sense.
Yeah, I don't doubt you. Yeah, I mean, because I heard David Goggins say something to a very similar sentiment, and I haven't heard it for a while actually. So it just reminded me when you mentioned it, is that you really do. Well, I haven't experienced it myself, but to poorly paraphrase and quote Mr. Goggins, that you find like and yourself now, you find yourself in these areas of your mind which you had no idea existed and you had no idea you could deal with, and it's almost a safe, dangerous place to be in. And it made sense when he said it. It makes a lot of sense when you say it, but I still don't fully. I can't grasp that. Would you be able to just explain, for my benefit, how that actually feels to be in those areas? What you can relate it to, because it's like a lot of people listening and are in that boat of like, yeah, it makes sense, but what, why, what, how?
Yeah. I think how I see it is there's sort of a full spectrum of experience that's possible to you. And if we talk about the physical side of things, there's a full spectrum of like physical experience, and you can have like pure pleasure, which we can all imagine what that feels like. Everyone knows what pure pleasure feels like, and you're in the moment and is think about nothing else but that pure pleasure, right? And then it's sort of, and then there's like different levels of comfort, and there's like a beautiful place that we love to be, which is just that sort of comfort zone, maybe watching a film with your girlfriend on the sofa, or just like real relaxation. And then there's sort of certain elements of struggle, and there's challenges at work and all those sorts of things. And then there's a whole other side of the spectrum that a lot of people just don't visit, And that, I believe, that is like the extreme side of things that mostly, if not self-inflicted, are horrible experiences, and you wouldn't sort of wish them upon anyone. I think a lot of people go through extremely traumatic experiences or near-death experiences or things like that, and they discover a lot about themselves through those experiences. And this might be extreme and it might be wrong, but it's kind of how I see it. I think the self-infliction of those kind of extreme experiences, whether it's pushing your physical self to the limits in an ultra marathon or something like that, you do find yourself to some degree, you find a part of yourself that you've never visited before, because you're going to that other end of the extreme. It's extreme discomfort, and it's the opposite of pleasure. All you want to do is get out of it. But if you keep pushing in that space, you discover a lot about yourself, because there's so much more to you than just the side of the spectrum that is from comfort to pure pleasure. There's a whole other side of the spectrum that should be visited every now and then, that teaches you a lot about yourself, a lot about resilience, how much you have in you, a lot about sort of mental strength and fortitude, and how much you really have in you to deal with the rest of the spectrum. And I think that's why when you visit those places every now and then, the rest of the spectrum kind of feels small to you. You're like, yeah, it's all pathetic. All those challenges at work that I'm dealing with doesn't really feel like much, because I've dealt with far more recently. So I think the self-discovery piece is because most people don't ever discover that side of themselves. They don't really understand what it means to go there. And I mean, I see this, we don't have to do extreme stuff. It doesn't have to be like ultra marathons or anything like that. To be honest with you, it can just be as it can be as simple as pushing yourself physically on a daily basis. There's tons of people who just never do it. The other day, I was messaged by someone. You know, I looked at her profile picture. She looked pretty physically fit. She didn't look like she was, had any sort of fitness challenges in that sense. Like she seemed like a fit person, but she was really afraid of getting out of breath on a 5K. She was worried about getting out of breath, and I was like, man, you're so not used to pushing yourself that your
Mm.
fear is literally just something that is just a normal human physical thing, just a heightened heart rate and getting a bit out of breath. It is such a normal thing that we should be doing often, and so many people don't even visit that level. They just don't. They just really don't push themselves, and they might look physically fit because they have a fairly okay diet. They're never really in a massive calorie surplus, so they keep in shape, but they never push themselves like at all. They get scared of what it feels like to just be a little bit a little bit uncomfortable on a daily basis. And that for me, all it says is that there's potential for everyone to visit that in themselves a little bit. I went on a tempo run this morning, bit of a progression run. I visited that place a little bit, not a huge amount. It was a 28-minute run, but I went for it a little bit, and I feel better for it because I sort of had that
Mm.
satisfaction. There's a huge amount of satisfaction on the other side of just putting yourself into that space a little bit, and people just don't do it. They just don't do it that much, and I think that's really sad. And I think it's sad because you should do it for the physical benefits and all that sort of stuff, but it's also sad because you end up just becoming really weak, like psychologically
Mm.
weak. You can't deal with anything because you never push yourself. And all of the pseudo motivational fitness people online will say this sort of stuff. I don't want to start sounding like them, but it is true. Like, push yourself a bit, have a go, like see where your limits are. There will be no regret on the other side of it. And so many people just love sitting in that comfort zone. They don't want to push. They might even scoff at people who say there's any value in it. And I think we end up seeing pretty weak-minded people because of it.
Yeah, it's so interesting and true that you say it's the two sides, the duality of it, where people who've had something that's happened to them, be it a life-threatening occurrence or whatever might have happened, versus people who take themselves there voluntarily, where I feel taking yourself there voluntarily gives you that control and confidence that you have at least a semblance of control in what otherwise can be a very chaotic life. As I'm a personal trainer by trade, I don't know if you knew,
Mm.
but I was so shocked because to you or I take it you were very athletic or sporty when you were younger, to a certain degree. I was as well, and unless and you, that tends to lean towards the fact that you've been surrounded by people of that nature or raised in a family of that nature as well. And I am to this day now, from training many people, unsure whether or not something that can be trained within a person, or it requires a specific situation for them to realize it for themselves. Which is one of the reasons why I am obsessed with the stuff that you put out. Because as a trainer, having to try and motivate people in different ways and using different tactics and working what's best for them, one thing that I've always found works the best, but is quite hard to get out there in just an hour's session, is it's almost like you're leading a horse to water and not forcing them to drink. And that's something that with your stuff and that you put out, the sentiment behind it is there, that you're leading people based not off greed, not off your own self-interest, but of your own.
So if you're hearing snorting in the background, that's a dog. It's not me.
Yeah, it's of your own kind of volition and your own desire to help people selflessly. And again, I don't know whether or not it can be trained, but do you believe it can be something, it's something you have to find in yourself? Or is it something that is just a realization? Or how would you incite that in others to make the right decision for themselves?
Well, I personally, I think that the fitness industry and a lot of so-called coaches out there do it in the wrong way. What they do is they take people and they say to these people that as they are broken, or they are wrong, or they are not enough, and in order to get to where they should be, they should act in this way. And that's just a broken message. The reality is that no one's going to do anything if you just tell them to do it, and they especially won't do it sustainably. They won't be doing it for a long period of time. You have to appeal to people in a way that gets them thinking why they want to do it. So I've had a career in sales, and one of the most groundbreaking things you can learn about sales is that you're never convincing anyone of what you think. You are having them convince themselves. If you can get them to a point, if you ask them enough questions and you get them thinking in a certain way, and you get them to a point where they conclude, oh yeah, I think I should do this, or I think I should buy, they don't feel like they've been sold to. It can happen. You can feel like overwhelmed and sold to, but they don't feel like they've been sold to. They feel like they've been given the right information and they've made the decision
Opportunity.
themselves. Yeah. And it's the same with any sort of fitness situation. I can't convince anyone to go and do something that, they wouldn't have done already had they not been guided in the right way. I can tell people you should eat this, or you should run like this, and you should do fitness, blah blah blah. But I have to remember that, like, a lot of people don't have the fortune I had of being in a family, with siblings who played sport, and uh, fit parents who, my dad used to run, and my mum was always doing exercise, and I went to schools that encouraged sport and all that sort of stuff, and I was into it. So many people do not have that environment, and they have to figure out at some point in their life how they're gonna change what's been conditioned in them, change how they think. And they're not going to do that just by becoming someone else. No one's going to just sort of suddenly become like a really fit person who's been used to it all their life. They have to figure out their own path towards it, and they have to enjoy the process, and they have to find something they're interested in, and they have to give themselves good reasons for it. And it can't be that their current self is not enough. They have to see that whatever end goal they want to get to, it's still a version of them, but it's the same person as they are now. Like, who they are now is capable of being who they want to be. It's not who you are now is needs to change, is broken, all this sort of stuff. Yes, some behaviors need to change, and you need to change your habits a bit, but ultimately it's the same person. You are you now, and you will still be you when you get physically fit. But you just have to change some behaviors and figure out how you can make that enjoyable. You can't constantly just tell people they're not enough and they need to sort their act out and change who they are ultimately deep down, because that's not very good. I don't think that's a good message, and I don't think it works anyway. So
Yeah, you had a really good podcast episode about something along a similar lines, being that comparison. And it really got me thinking about it, because I'm a kind of person, again, in a similar way, I see the duality in things quite a lot. And I'm always kind of thinking, shit, what about this? But then shit, what about this? And it's like, you're kind of locked in that middle of it. And then especially with that comparison element of, I feel like what you're alluding to, just please correct me if I'm wrong, is that comparing yourself now to where you were or where you wanted to be. And then quite embarrassingly, not embarrassingly, but a couple of years ago, when I was trying to do my fitness thing for my PT online, I made a video similar to what you just said about doing things out of joy and out of love for what you're doing. But I ended up deleting it because at the moment, when I firmly, fully believed it as in the only way, the only right way to actually go about training consistently. But then it was about a couple of weeks later, because I was doing that and I was enjoying my training, I was consistent, but then I was realizing that I wasn't actually progressing. I was actually kind of going backwards because I didn't find that balance well enough between improvement and wanting to get better, and on the opposite side of things, seeing myself as already good enough.
Yeah, super interesting topic. I had thought about this a lot, because I think people can get the wrong message when you talk about you have to enjoy it, you have to have fun, you have to find joy in it, and it's not going to be sustainable if you don't enjoy it. I believe everything I've just said there. Obviously, you have to enjoy it, but really, when it comes to fitness, when it comes to chasing goals and reaching hard to achieve goals, you're not going to enjoy each aspect of it every time you do it. So you're not, I have not loved, and hopefully these days I'm not going to have to do it as much because I have a full-time job, but I have not loved having to wake up at 5:30 a.m. to work out or to go to the gym. I've not, like, in the moment of it, I've not been chuffed about getting up at 5:30. Shock.
Yeah.
But overall, there are things I enjoy about it. So I find joy in the moment, once I am on my feet, I find joy in the peace of the morning and making my coffee, my pour over coffee, and, like, lovingly grinding those beans. And I love the process of that. It's like a mindful process. I find joy in that. And overall as well, I enjoy the entire process of working hard. And how I like to put it is, you have to find joy in the hard things you do. So you have to figure out how to actually enjoy and find satisfaction in working hard. So when it comes to it's all a narrative change quite often. So when it comes to going to the gym, for example, you might go to the gym and you're dreading going to the gym. You cannot be asked to go to the gym. I'm not enjoying the fact that I'm working out, drudgery, all this sort of stuff. But if you can try and figure out how to focus on the right things, like I'm gonna feel great after it. I'm literally gonna feel phenomenal after it. I can actually enjoy just the peace of the gym. Maybe I can think of maybe there's a podcast I can listen to whilst I'm there. Maybe this time I can ease up, or maybe or to battle the whole point of making sure you are progressing, really focusing on what it means to progress. Like, oh, actually, if I do get this session in, I'll feel great afterwards. I will have progressed. And there's been so many times where I've not wanted to go. I've gone, and then I've performed well because I've managed to muster up uh, the fortitude to go for it. And then afterwards, I'm so satisfied with myself. I'm not just satisfied with the fact that I did it and I feel good after. I've got a pump on and I feel like I've progressed. I'm satisfied with the fact that I've overcome those thoughts. And you have to find joy in overcoming those thoughts. You have to find joy in the to-do list and ticking it off. And if you can flip the perspective from, oh, I have to do this, oh, this is hard, this sucks, to this whole process is satisfying to me. I love the hard work, I love the grind, I actually enjoy it to some degree overall, and there's huge satisfaction in it. And actually, once I'm finished with the process, I've run the race, or I've trained for the high rocks or whatever people are doing these days, then you can probably reflect on it and go, do you know what? I want to do that whole process again. That was great for me. It was great for my body, great for my mind, and I'm into this. This is a great process. And so the whole package, the whole thing needs to be enjoyable in not in a way that's like, oh, it's enjoyable because it's really comfortable. Like there's joy in drinking in the pub because it's very easy, very comfortable. You're with your mates, you're chatting, you're getting loose. That's a very easy and enjoyable thing to do. There's also joy in the process of training for an ultra marathon and then running that ultra marathon. But with that second one, there's a huge amount of pain and sacrifice and hardship and challenge and all those things. But all of those things are joyful. They can be done in a joyful way. You can find satisfaction in all those things as well. There's more to you than just comfort and pleasure. There's so much more to you than that. So go and pursue things that are far more satisfying, that are going to teach you more about yourself, and that you'll be a bit more proud of when you're done with. And there's enjoyment in all of that, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about this exact thing the other day. I was like, how is it that I can help people to get to how can I relate it? How can I make an analogy of this for myself in my mind? Because I can't just say do it because it's difficult and it's going to be good for you in the end. Because there's obviously loads of sayings such as the what makes it worse makes it better, and easy life. Sorry, easy decisions, hard life, hard decisions, easy life, and so on and so forth. And I kind of boiled it down at the end to almost like the story of Pavlov's dog, where it was, you won't enjoy it. You're not going to enjoy it at the beginning. You're not going to enjoy it at all. It takes a fair amount of just fucking doing it, like before you start to see any benefit of it. And then it's when you do see that benefit and it's more consistent, then the idea of when your alarm goes off in the morning, do you get excited or do you get pissed off? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel sluggish? I've no doubt in my mind that everybody starts off, or at least has phases, no matter where they are in their life. They just get, it feels like shit to try and get out of bed in the morning. Like you don't want to, you're not motivated, you're not inspired. But then you do it for long enough and you see those benefits that eventually it's like you don't have to wait for the reward after you've done the hard thing. The reward starts to come beforehand because you know it's coming in anticipation. But the issue I have with that often, especially for young people going into the gym, which happened with myself, and you almost have that kind of regression where you can see with people's first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, and I presume the exact same thing with running, where when you start to enjoy it loads and you get that confidence of it, you always see those people, especially the young guys in the gym, who then start to wear things that are a lot tighter, a lot more revealing, a lot more showy off feet, and it takes their eye off the ball and they don't have that struggle anymore. Because they haven't got that struggle anymore, it's started to seep in the egotism, the egotistical nature of, I'm actually getting really good at this. Because just to relate back to the comparison side of things, is when you start to get good at running, you might just look at other people and think, oh, I bet they haven't done that far, or they don't seem they're that good. I don't think they'll carry it on. It's like, it's thoughts, you know, are just thoughts, but it's like, why are you thinking that? And it's a path which is a long and arduous path, that kind of self-discovery, like you say. But how long for yourself with running did it take for it all to actually start to click? Then why you were doing it, why it feels good, and not feel so much like it was an arduous task. How long did it take you from that? Actually, would that make you 17 when you started? Properly
Yeah,
started?
but 17, 18. Yeah, yeah. How long did it take? I don't know. When I think about it, like I was definitely training in all the wrong ways when I started. So I was just gunning it the whole time, and then just looking at, well, I'd say looking at my splits. I would time. I'd gun it, and then I'd time it on my Casio, and then I'd sort of plug it into map my run, and that way I could actually calculate the average pace
Before Strava?
way before Strava. Yeah. And so it took me quite a while to get onto Strava because I was so used to using Map My Run. Back then, I didn't know that Strava would be the thing, and I just took ages, and then eventually I got onto it. I think when I was at uni or something. But yeah, the first sort of 5 years. Do you know what? I think I wasn't really ever that mixed up with the whole running crowd, and so I think that was quite advantageous for me in some ways. Like I really did always run for my own sake, and I always understood the mental benefits of it. That was always why I did it. I didn't really ever care for running a 5K time or a 10K time, or any other distance really. I just cared about the fact that I was going for a run, I was putting effort in, and I was like getting uncomfortable a little bit, and I knew the benefits of that discomfort, and that was, and then like now and then I would kind of fall into the trap of comparison, and then be like, whoa, hate this, don't like this sucks, I'm gonna go back and do my own thing. um and I've always wanted to try and encourage other people who get like so worked up about, oh, I'm doing this, can't do this, and that person's doing this and all this, and I'm just like, just do your own thing, man. Just go, like, get some shoes from Sports Direct, and just go on a run. You don't have to wear all the things that everyone else is wearing. You don't have to do the things everyone else is doing. You don't even need to watch. Just go run. Like, chill out about it a bit. It's not that big a deal. Then when you really want to get into it, if you really want to get into it, you want to get into the gear, and you want to get into all the data and the training methodologies, all that sort of stuff. I became obsessed with it just out of pure curiosity. Then by all means, there's the beauty in having a hobby. There's so much to look into. I could be into bakery in the same way if I was that into bakery. I used to be a drummer. I guess I am a drummer, but I used to be a really keen drummer, and I was obsessed with all the gear, obsessed with all these different cymbals. I'd watch endless videos on YouTube about drumming, and all this stuff. I was just obsessed with it in that way. And anyone has a hobby can get obsessed with it in the right way, but it's your own little personal hobby, and it shouldn't be a case of sizing yourself up with other people. It's just something you do. It's a hobby. It happens to be really great for you, but yeah, running doesn't have to be this sort of competition. Forgotten the question now. What was I waffling about?
It was, how long was it before it actually started to click? Where
Yeah.
you say you did it for the mental benefits, but when did it actually just start to think, okay, this is something I will never not do. I will never
Yeah.
live without
Yeah.
it. And it's something you
There's
had to
definitely
do. And it just became simple.
Yeah, there was definitely a moment where there was definitely a time where I was like, oh, okay, I actually do want to do this forever. Like I want to make sure I have this tool in the toolbox functioning well for a very long period into my, like, long into my life. I would love to be considered an elderly person and still running in some capacity or moving my body in some way over the hills and that sort of stuff. I would love that. That'd be cool. who knows what's to come, but I'll do everything I possibly can to make sure I'm training in the right way to ensure I can have that daily practice in my life forever. But that clicked maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago actually. I think it was just, just as COVID was approaching, really. Yeah, it was about COVID. It feels like it's been ages, but it's about 5 years ago. And
Oh, COVID was about 5 years ago now, wasn't it?
5 years ago, isn't
Shit.
it? Yeah, mad.
Jeez.
And it was about that time I'd been a keen runner and stuff, but it was only that was when I first bought a running watch. Like, I hadn't had a running watch before then, mainly because I was just broke the whole time. I couldn't afford it, but I just gave myself this gift of a running watch. And I was like, okay, now I'll start getting into the data and stuff. All this stuff I used to hate about runners, and I didn't like
all the
I
logbooks
didn't
and
like
the paper and
yeah, I didn't like the fact that everyone was so obsessed with their Strava data and all this sort of stuff. And I went out with a Casio each time and just ran by feel and enjoyed the process. And everyone else was too obsessed with all this data. And then I got a watch, and then I became obsessed with the data.
it's like,
But
we're not that bad of people.
yeah, exactly. But it was mainly of huge benefit, because then I was able to actually train properly and understand what I was doing with my body. But fundamentally, you don't need a watch to train properly. It was just a case of like actually not going hard the whole time. And finally, over the last 5 years, it's got to a point where I just don't have the pains and aches and pains I used to. I used to just endlessly have like knee ache and like hip issues and all sorts, just because I was just gunning it the whole time. I wasn't doing any decent strength training. So yeah, the last 5 or 6 years has been a real like transformation in my running, because I've approached it in a way that I think is the most sustainable way I can do it. And that is probably far more easy training than anyone else I know.
Yeah, I was looking at the whole watch stuff as well. I only used a watch for a timer. Well, I used to do it because when I got into personal training, I did the whole same thing as you did, but during COVID, just like video after video after video of just like, oh, this muscle connects to here, and if you move it like this and you use this science based, and I was like, oh my God, this has blown my mind. And as a hobby, you kind of come to realize quickly, it's like, oh, I was just like a stupid kid who was judging people for taking things too seriously. And then you start to take them seriously. And like, this is really fun. And then again, you kind of pitter off a bit, don't you? And it's like, okay, I don't need to take it as seriously now. I know it. It's instilled in me now that it doesn't need to be taken seriously, because you can, and you've been doing it long enough that throughout that practice, you can feel what your body needs if you're honest with yourself. It can be harder or easier at different times. Like to now, I'm very early on in my running stage, and the thing that keeps holding me back, again, like you say, is I'm not glad to hear it, but I'm glad to hear you were similar to me, where it was the knees. It's the knees, and for me, my calves. If I'm not running at a slower pace and really trying to hold myself in and hold myself back, I'll wake up the next day and my calves will be shot up to pieces. My knees will be like hurting, and I'm like, oh, done it again. I was going out way too hard and way too fast, and it's just trying to keep that consistency. And like for me, like I love the idea of that's runnable. It's like running different surfaces, and it's like, if it's runnable, do it, and blah 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 blah. Like I won't set a timer on my phone. My watch. I'll set a stopwatch. I'll be like, okay, I'll just go as far as I can as the crow flies until the halfway point, and that's the easy part. And then the hard part is making it back before I doubled up, before it gets back to the end of it. End of it there. Cool. But I was looking at it because I try my best not to track things at times now. But I do like the science and some of the maths behind it. And I found it so interesting, just kind of working out the maths with, say, VO2 max, especially. Because there's lots of new data now. I don't know how much you know. Hopefully you can help me out in this as well. The VO2 max being one of the main predicators of lifespan, life expectancy. And I started looking at exercise more of an investment more than a time spent or time wasted when I could be doing other things or whatever it might be. Even if I'm not enjoying it, it's time invested. and I can't remember the figures I got to, but it's like, how much benefit do you actually gain, and how late can you start? How much benefit can you actually gain in terms of life, additional life, could I say? Is that something that plays on your mind, or is it something that's like, it happens, it happens?
Oh, I don't think. Yeah. I mean, I want to be. I want to be physically fit and mobile and able to move around for a long period into my life. And I think resistance training and mobility um, and running, fitness training, cardiovascular health, all that stuff is really great for that. But who knows what life's going to throw at you? I don't know if I'm gonna live all that long. But I'll do everything I can to be healthy, but also enjoy my life. I think so. I know, man. It's an interesting balance to strike because I think there are definitely people who are way too health obsessed, and that's cool if they're into that. But it feels like they're sacrificing a lot of pleasure in life for just like optimization and being like their best physical self and all this. And it's just like a bit like, I don't know, man. Live your life a bit. Like
Mm.
I I'm definitely not an extremely healthy person. I think I'm probably more healthy than a lot of people, of course, but I'm not like health obsessed. I care about it, but I also like having a lot of fun. I like enjoying my life and laughing about stuff that maybe others think it shouldn't be laughed about. That it's just a bit serious. Like, I don't know. Some people just take it all a bit too seriously. I feel like I've become a bit of a broken record recently. I'm always talking about like take it less seriously, take it less seriously. But I do think especially within the fitness space, what ends up happening is that people watching this fitness stuff, they just become too obsessed with like their healthy granola breakfasts and their like health, fitness. It's like because most influencers, if you look at like influencers across the board, most of them in like there's probably a big proportion of them who are like quote unquote fitness influencers, or they just end up falling into that sort of category because they're into their health and fitness, and then they end up giving people advice on it. And I don't know, man. It's just like then people just end up being all obsessed with it as if it's the be all and end all of life. But being fit and healthy is something that adds more to your life. It doesn't it's not like how I see it is if you are sacrificing too much because of your fitness and health goals, then you're missing the point. It Fitness and health should only be a positive in your life. It should only add positive things to your life. It should mean that you're, sharper in the you're sharper in the mind because you've got that exercise in. You've got better health because all of your health indicators are high because you're doing a lot of exercise and you're eating healthily. You're able to get to the top of that mountain because and other people wouldn't be able to, and see those great views and experience those things. You can comfortably go skiing. I don't know, like whatever. Like all these things are great experiences that you're adding to your life. And I think also when you're physically fit and healthy, you don't have to really worry about having a bit of a boozy night because it's not going to be the end of the world. You might feel shit the next day, and that's probably not worth doing it for. But like, live your life a bit, I think. And I also think like there's a lot of there's a lot of influencers who are like they'll say, oh, there's nothing wrong with a bit of a drink. It doesn't matter if you have a few, one or two cocktails here or there. Like one or two cocktails. I have like 8 pints in a night or 10 pints in a night. What are you talking about? One or two cocktails? Like, who are you talking to? Like, we're normal people. We're normal people who sometimes get absolutely shit-faced drunk and probably not advised. It's not a healthy thing to do, but sometimes we do it because that's like, it's a normal thing to do in the UK. You go to the pub and you have like 6 pints. Like, what are we
Rest.
talking about here? And I'm not advising that. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying you do that. And you don't need to worry too much about the fact that you're sometimes doing that. It's probably really risky stuff to say because obviously like it is a testy topic. But like last month I went sober for the month in October, and there's huge obvious benefits. Like all the benefits are just everyone talks about them all the time. There's obvious benefits. You feel more alert. You it's better, way better for your health. You know, alcohol is ultimately poison, and there's all these benefits. I don't have to list them. Just go on all of these like sobriety pages, and you'll find plenty of benefits. But I always just like I found like I fancied a beer. I wanted to go to the pub and have a Guinness with my mates. What's wrong with that? And I just think I get a bit bored of people like they're pretending to be real. But I mean, oh, you know, don't worry, you have a couple of pints every now and then. I mean, I don't know. I think most people are drinking a lot more than in the UK are drinking a lot more than you're letting on. And you know, I'm not someone to encourage that lifestyle, but let's just be real. Let's just be real about what we're doing here. And I struggle a bit because people don't understand how to kind of balance the two. They don't really understand how to marry two different identities. You know, you're either a boozer or you're really fit and healthy. No, how about being really fit and healthy and also enjoying yourself at a wedding? I don't know. Like, yeah. Am I
It's
just, yeah. Do I make any sense with that, or do it just sound like an
no, of
alcoholic?
course, no, 100%. I think that's one of the most authentic ways I've heard somebody put it across. Because as there's two things that string to mind. One of them was something I heard from John Cena of all people,
Legend.
and he said yeah, legend wherever he is. But he said something along the lines of on a podcast that I never want to be too healthy. Oh, sorry, I never want to be so healthy that I can't go and get shit faced with my mates. I never want to be too bothered about my health that I worry about having that one extra drink or doing something that I know I shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Because that defeats the whole point of it. And it's just like, yeah, it's fucking too right, yeah. And then you get this, exactly what you're saying is those with the influencer culture. It's just such a fucking mess. Sorry, I swear quite a lot sometimes when I get a bit passionate. But I read this. It was an article. I don't know if you've read it beforehand. I don't remember who it was by. It was called "The Perils of Audience Capture." I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
Have you heard of it?
Sounds interesting by its title, though.
Yeah. So it used an example of this guy who used to do mukbangs, and I read a different book since then called "The Status Game" by a guy called Will Storr, and it's absolutely brilliant, especially for people who are in yours and my position. It's just something that's kind of a cautionary tale of evolutionary. A lot of the things that we do, it boils down to status. There's virtue signaling, there's power signaling, there's a load of different things which we want to, at our core, whichever way we want to see it, we want to, at some level, whether we like it or not, we have an ego and we like to feel better than other people. Regardless of whether you know that's right or wrong, that is just the truth of human nature. You can mitigate it, whatever you want to do, but it's there. We're all born with it. And a big part of that is the way that other people see you, or more importantly, the way that you see other people see you. And when it comes to that woke culture, there's a lot of people, especially you mentioned earlier, but I wanted to mention it then, wait for the right moment. Younger people getting online, doing something that gets a positive or negative response. And a lot of people see it, and a lot of people start to hype up and support them or get at them, whichever way. Because a lot of people talk about the negative side of things that people gain at people online. But the positive sides of things have their own negatives too. If you were to do something which other people loved, you then start to associate that in your head as, this is what I need to carry on doing, this is what I'm good at, this is who I am. And when eventually that stops because it might just be a trend or it might just be a fad, people hate that it's not working anymore. And they start to double down, and they feel like they pigeonhole themselves into such a specific niche. And then they see that as their entire identity because they've stopped doing what they loved or what they enjoyed doing, and now they're just focusing on what they think other people will love because they feel like they are not the person that they should be or not getting the response that they should get if they don't do that. Which ties so much into every aspect. It goes from The example they used was a guy called Nick Ocado who did mukbangs and then got so overweight that he was almost died. And there's loads of other things, especially with political influencers who just double down and go extremely far left or extremely far right.
Mm.
So the same with wokeism now as well, where you've got to kind of pick
Yeah.
a side and double down. And people are so afraid to say something which they feel might rub off on them negatively or is contradictory to what they may have previously said, that they come down like a hammer and just stick to it. So when I hear somebody who's like, yeah, just have like a pint every now and then, it's like, yeah, you think you're supposed to say that. Everyone can see that. But at the same time, because it's so ingrained in us, I worry that the more successful, I'll say successful, but the more popular a person gets on a platform, that it becomes almost impossible to find their true selves and have that come out and give honest, authentic advice, which I
Yeah.
feel at the moment you have absolutely smashed. And it's almost a spiritual thing because people can just sense it. It's there. With that whole, going off on a massive, going off on a massive tangent, but with that whole area and the fitness influence in the fitness area, I'm so glad to see that there's at least somebody, yourself, who has noticed and sees the issue with how things are. And hopefully it's the beginning of a new trend of authenticity, which so many people can come to benefit from, young people especially.
Yeah, I think I what I try and do all the time is like I try to be cognizant of like how I would communicate to someone in a cafe or whatever. Like I'm hanging out with my mate and they're asking about running. How would I communicate it to them? Or I'm talking to a mate who knows like they maybe where we are in the pub, we're 6 pints deep. They know that I'm not someone who's health obsessed because we're, drinking with 6 Guinnesses and or whatever, and that might not sort of marry to the fitness identity that many people have. They know the truth, and I'm just talking to them. I would like, for I don't know. Yeah, I'd like for people to understand that perfection is bullshit and you can actually do great things without seeking perfection all the time. But it's also a work in progress for me. Like I think it would be great if I drank less, and I am currently trying to drink less. There's something it's like a little bit of a thing I'm going on. Is just having a better relationship with when I'm drinking. Like, do I really need that single beer on a Tuesday evening with my dinner? Probably not. I could have a non-alcoholic beer at least, or I could just have a different drink. There's different things like that, and I think it's just coming to terms with bad and good habits. Everyone has bad habits, and everyone has their pulls and pushes. And some people just don't love alcohol. They've never liked it. They've always been never really liked how it made them feel or make them feel sick, or they've never liked the taste. Sweet. I've always enjoyed it. So I've always I've always been someone who has liked to drink and liked going out and all that sort of stuff. And I don't think there's any real point in hiding that all that much, but there's definitely some damage that can be done in encouraging it. I wouldn't encourage people to drink to excess. I think it's just like ultimately really bad for your health, like extremely bad for your health. All of the studies indicate that drinking is horrendous for your health. And I think society would probably be better if there was no such thing as alcohol. I think costs of here in the UK, costs to the NHS would be way down if alcohol didn't exist. Domestic violence would be way down if alcohol didn't exist. Ultimately, alcohol is a really dangerous and damaging thing for health and for society. And there's so many things. There's so many reasons why it's such a bad thing. But if you have a good relationship with it, it doesn't have to be horrendous. There are a few things I love more than whiskey around the fire, or wine on the beach. I think you can enjoy it, and it can be you can have a healthy relationship with it. But everyone, each their own. But there's no point, there's no point pretending that you don't do it. Like last thing I want is for, like, it's interesting. People that don't know me but have seen my Instagram, for example, are really shocked when they see me doing something that doesn't marry up to their idea of me from Instagram. They're like, "Whoa," and that makes sense because we bucket people into identities, and it's the same with politics. We have extreme polarization because there's no such thing as nuance anymore. And if someone says something that could be seen as supportive of the right, then they're completely right wing. Or if someone says something that could be supportive of the left, then they're completely left wing. And I actually, as much as it seems nowadays like a cop out, I'm pretty centrist, to be honest. I have some right wing ideologies, some left wing ideologies. I feel like I really, neither of them appeal to me, especially the extremes of both. But it's difficult for that to gain any attention online. So all of the political chat online is extreme and aggressive and polarizing, entices engagement. And so it's a difficult world that we're living in, because ultimately it's difficult to break through the noise if the noise is all extreme and loud, and you actually want to come through with a bit of measure and a little bit of nuance and realism. But I don't know, in the fitness space it feels a little bit easier because I've always
Very
seen it as a
one-dimensional in fitness within
yes,
regard
yeah,
to a
yeah,
certain degree.
exactly. 100%. I've always seen it as a bit of an advantage if you want to, in a funny way, if there's loads of the same shit, if there's just loads of noise, it's all the same stuff, then you have an advantage. You enter that space because you can put your head up above the poppy field in a good way. You can gain attention in the right way if everything in that space all feels the same. If someone's scrolling through fitness content and it's like same, you have this great opportunity. Yes, it's saturated, but you have this great opportunity to be different because it's all the same noise. And that's how I saw it. I kind of was like, I feel like I should just be myself about this, give my own advice, and I think that would be different because currently I could just see all the same stuff. You see all the same female content or the same male content, and it's just a bit. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of creators now that are coming out and being unique, which is beautiful to see. And they're being unique and they're honest and they're a breath of fresh air. And I think we need a bit more of that. Like, it doesn't, like, social media doesn't have to be. I posted a video yesterday about how social media doesn't have to be like just a negative thing, because that someone asked a really great question. They were like, how do you kind of, I can't remember how they phrased it exactly, it was a pretty long comment, but he was basically saying, how do you reconcile giving advice on social media but also the reality that social media is bad for you, and I actually don't need to be on here to gain any sort of value, and I'd be better off without it altogether. I was like, it's a great point. You would probably be better off without social media. I would encourage you to not be on social media, but because you are here and there's a lot of people who are here, then I want to make sure that there's some stuff on there that I think I believe in. And if all the good people that are on social media just suddenly realized that social media was inherently a bad thing for humans and they left it, then all you'd be faced with was negative content, bad, brain rotting content, and people
Ideologized as
voyeurs who
well.
would just and just voyeurs who are consuming it without any self-control or critical thinking, and it'd be even more of a mess than it is. But at least there are some people on social media who are putting out really great stuff, and there's a huge amount of value to be had on some social media. And I think it's a powerful thing, and it's a great thing if you find there are corners of social media that are really positive, really encouraging, really good for you to be consuming, really inspiring. And I mean, I know firsthand there's been inspirations of mine. I've been inspired by plenty of social media characters, and have done things or sort of leaned into certain things because of social media content or podcasts or whatever. It's not all just value, doesn't just come from the books on the shelf. It can come from video and audio content. So I think we see it all as pretty negative, but there's a lot of positive to be had. Yeah.
Yeah, it's especially with, I see so many issues with it. Obviously, there's benefits to it as well. We all know that, and they're getting more clear. Even like TikTok's just come out with their new educational section. So like you can go on
Right.
past TikTok now. I don't know if it's rolled out in the UK or wherever. My girlfriend showed me. I don't have TikTok myself, but it's now there's a whole section which is just educational videos. It uses its own AI to see it's people with whiteboards doing maths, doing equations, talking about astronomy, and it's all educational stuff, which is like, okay, good on you, TikTok, good on you. And it's, you can see that those things are there, and it's from our perspective, from me and you, and to anybody else who's either on social media to post content as well. It's I feel when it's not fun to do, when it isn't something you do out of an overflowing of your heart, but instead is something that you feel you are trying to reach out and grab to pull in to fulfill yourself.
Yeah.
That's when the issues arise and the content that comes out can influence people in the wrong way. So kind of knowing where you come from in the beginning, and that's something I always tried to do, especially is, even though at times I've not had to work, I could do something like this, and I can do this and focus all my intention and focus all of my intention and energy on podcasts, social media, and other stuff. I don't think I'd want to. Because if all that was going around my head all the time was, I need to do this because this is how I pay my bills. If I don't, why is this video not performed as well as that video? Why is that not doing so well? And all this is, I'm just going to fall into that trap of attention grabbing stuff constantly and fall into that pitfall, which so many of today's content creators have done. And it's becoming a lot more of a mindful practice for myself to actually use social media to see myself and how I am perceiving the world and acting within it.
Yeah.
And with you mentioning that you just quit your job, I wanted to know what your thoughts were from somebody who's right at the precipice. That's the one. That's the one.
There you got it.
You're someone who's right at the precipice of that journey. How daunting is it? How exciting is it? Where do you feel yourself? And what are your own plans for what you want to do within the running community and your run chats and potential run clubs and podcasts? It's a massive journey, and I'm excited to see where you're at now and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say as well to that, you're wise to think that if you were to just do social media stuff, then you could potentially fall into the trap of
Sorry, can I
viewing it
just
in the wrong
clarify?
way.
That's how I feel for myself. Not that everyone else feels that way. There's a lot of people who've got their heads wrapped around in a very good position. This is just how I think, right, this could happen with me.
Absolutely, and you're wise to think that way. I think I need to be cognizant of that, falling into that trap. I think what I'd say is, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the formula of a hook grabbing someone's attention, having an arcing story and a conclusion, right? I speak a lot with there's a good friend of mine. He's got a podcast and he's making content, and he really feels like it doesn't come naturally to him. And we talk at length about all of these different things that I've learned over the last 4 years to try and grab attention and make it feel natural and have an arcing story, conclusion, all that kind of good stuff, and the different types of content you can play with, whether it's like a text hook or whatever. There's loads of stuff that loads of people do. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. It can actually be just a really interesting thing. Like it's age old. It's marketing. You watch an old info commercial, whatever they call them. The hook is like, are you feeling tired at work? Whatever it is, it's the same stuff. There's still a hook, and there's grab my attention, keep my attention, give me a call to action. It's the same. It's just marketing, and you can do that, and you're sort of limited with the constraints of the social media platform. So the social media platform will allow for a minute long video or like a 90-second reel or whatever it is. So you're constrained by that limitation. And so you have to figure out how to make a captivating, attention grabbing, and valuable video within that 90 seconds. And that is fun to me. I actually enjoy doing that. I I I like the challenge of, can I take a topic and basically create a clear message within that 90 seconds? And for me, sometimes like it'll just come to mind on my run, and I'll film it and see how it does and stitch it together. And sometimes I'm just like, yeah, it's a bit of a shit one. And then it doesn't, sure enough, it doesn't do that well, and whatever, just get another one out. But it's all data to me. I'm just sort of, I'm never looking at one video and going, oh, I really hope this one does really well, and then being disappointed that it doesn't do well and all that sort of stuff. I just am trying to get better at the craft all the time, and just trying to shift. I'm trying to ship as much as I possibly can. And then, sure enough, every now and then you get given more amazing, valuable data because a video does really well. And then you're like, oh, why did that do well? And then you can assess it, and you can see that you accidentally had the best hook and an amazing archetype. There's a reason why people will stick it out to the end, and then they get a great payoff. And then so they like it, engage with it, all that sort of stuff. Or there might be one video that is just a simple question, and you've just sort of posed a maybe a controversial opinion. Like recently, I put the caption "controversial opinion," and I just basically said, someone messaged me about running shoes the other day, and they said they've always used Nike because of brand loyalty. And I basically said to them, they don't need your brand loyalty. They sell more shoes than any other company on earth. And then I just sort of invited people to mention better running shoe brands. And sure enough, obviously that's encouraging people to go, oh yeah, I use this, I use that, I'll use this. But it's also controversial because some people are like, how can you say that Nike don't make the best shoes? And they come in hot. So you have huge engagement on a simple video, which is me walking to work, just saying a question. But if you ship constantly, you can just get that data. And I find it fun. I find it definitely like a fun, engaging thing to do. And I've always been a creative person, so it kind of it helps it's like a creative outlet for me, and I've always enjoyed that. I haven't ever within my work found that level of creativity that I really enjoy, and so it's been great for me. And in the same way, like business, I love business. I love partnerships. I've been talking to a lot of different brands recently. I'm adamant to not be represented by an agency. I'm representing myself at all costs, and I produce my own podcast. I do it all myself. Might be slightly harder in some ways, but it means that the partnerships I'm striking, I have full control over. I can engage with that partnership. I am choosing that brand because I like that brand, and I'm pitching to them on what I can offer them, and then they're pitching to me on what they can offer me. It's a good partnership. It's good. It's mutual, and I enjoy that whole process. Looking at building like a merch store at the moment, and I could just go to a standard, on print on demand company and get the full package and just pay an amount and get designs, and then they do the rest. But I'm deciding to go to a company that I've been speaking to for about 18 months, and we're working together in different ways. And this is one of those ways, and we're partnering on bigger picture stuff. So there's different stuff involved, but as part of it, we're doing a merch store as well. So we're getting like a bit of a test run going soon. And that's fun to me. I've engaged in that. I've built this brand. I'm engaging with them. I'm putting my pitch together. And I believe that's like a better, more authentic way to do things. Instead of just, well, let me outsource this, let me delegate this, let me get an agency to do this for me, and let me get like, obviously if I'm not a website designer, so I'll go on Fiverr and get a website designer or whatever. I'm not going to just try and do everything myself, and we'll delegate. But I think there's a beauty in the care and love that you have for your brand and your partnerships. And I think people see that. They'll see, I hope anyway, that people will see that any sponsors I get for my podcast, those sponsors will be chosen. They won't just be like Coleman's mustard. No offense to Coleman's mustard, but it's not going to be like
other brands of
Oral-B
mustard are available.
toothpaste. Yeah, it's not going to be like Oral-B toothpaste or Manscaped or something like that. Like I they're probably all great products, but I've never, cared about them, and they add no value really to the listener. So hopefully, you know, ultimately what I'm building is, by its business model, a media company, but also a running community. So my proposition to brands is reach, and is engaged reach. So those who I'm reaching are engaged in what we're doing. They're part of the community, and hopefully brands will feel like they want to be a part of that and attached to this sort of brand ethos that is ultimately just an extension of my own. But I want it to become bigger than me, right? So I don't want it just to be about me. I want it to be about this whole ethos of running. That's Runnable. It's this ethos. It's this ethos that people have resonated with. That doesn't, I don't believe, really exists in many places in the running space. And I think brands will. I know that brands are resonating with it. They like it, and I'm hoping that in the next few months it'll all become clear as to kind of what it looks like. And then there will also be direct to consumer stuff. So I'm planning on, like, I've had loads of messages recently, especially for whatever reason, but I've had loads of messages about coaching, like one-to-one coaching. And as much as I have done it in the past and have enjoyed working with individuals, if I'm being just completely honest, it's just really poor ROI. I just
Yeah.
can't, I can't personally, if I'm doing everything else that I'm doing and trying to provide value to other people, I don't think that I can actually offer as much genuine value to that individual as my sort of time would be spent. My time would be spent better elsewhere. And maybe in the future I'll do some one-to-one coaching, because it's very enjoyable, and I think it's really a valuable thing for someone to have a coach and to actually have guidance in that way, one-to-one guidance in that way. But I'm sort of shifting that to other coaches, and if you want to coach it, I'm not going to be that person. But hopefully online I'll have like info products, digital products, like plans, guides, courses, self-serve stuff, and then with those guides, courses, there'll be kind of explanations on how to adapt them and how to build your own plan. And the ultimate aim is to have individuals feel equipped and enabled to, maybe they have a coach for a bit, but they're not going to be able to afford a coach for the rest of their life. So I want them to feel equipped and enabled to actually train themselves and coach themselves, and do so in a way that is healthy and is sustainable. So yeah, there'll be newsletter, podcast, events, merchandise, info products. They're the 5 so far, all under the That's Runnable brand. And it's sort of built from the mantra, run the runnable, which I've sort of become a bit known for. Yeah, I just want to sort of have that ethos resonate with more people, and make it a little bit bigger than just Tommy Run PT. Because I cringe a bit at the idea of that personal brand. That personal brand is great, but I want it to be a bit bigger than me.
Yeah, I feel like that's what you've done so well at the beginning, well, from the early stages, and you set your mark with the best of intentions and the best ethos in mind. From speaking to you now, I'm kind of realizing that is a it was strategic and important to you that you did so. Because one thing I've seen you do, which I've seen very, very few people do, especially as a male fitness influencer, because not very often that males get this kind of community around what they do. Because I've worked with a lot of PTs beforehand who've built their own personal brands and built other types of things as well. But you have fostered an incredible community, an actual real community of people where it's safe. You haven't got to tell anybody that it's a safe, open space to talk about it. It just happens naturally. Your comment sections are filled and flooded with people who are asking for advice. There's people who are giving advice. There's people who are talking about it and questioning things. It's a genuine conversation within almost everything that you do. It's not people arguing, saying, "Oh, you should be doing this," or "You should be doing that," or "Why are you not doing this?" "Oh, this guy's stupid. This guy's really smart." Blah 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 blah. It's people come with a curious attitude, and they stay because they can connect with like-minded people. And
yeah, I agree. I love my audience. I mean, you mentioned there that there's not much negativity and stuff. I mean, if a video does well and it reaches people outside of my audience, you tend to get a few interesting comments. But I haven't had
Possibly, yeah.
heaps. I haven't had heaps. I think there's a lot more creators that get like a lot more grief. But what I love seeing is when someone asks a question, someone else comes in and answers for them, and then there's actually like a thread of comments, and it's all really
That happened with me.
genuinely just helpful. Yeah.
On your post, like I'm still getting notifications now. I think I got like a week ago, was it? Because when you did your lone wolf, it was a lone wolf, wasn't it?
Just last
The
week, yeah.
Yeah, the race for the lone wolf. I
Yeah.
asked that what was the strategy for that, because the 24-hour every hour on the hour 6 miles or 6 kilometers, was it?
Yeah, 6 kilometers on the hour every hour. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yeah, for 24 hours. I was like, what is the strategy for that? And I was asking you really, because I was like, I wonder what you're doing. And I was like, oh, 20 odd people. It's like, do this, do this, do this. You could try this, you could try that. And no one was arguing with each other, saying, no, don't do this. This is stupid. Don't listen to this guy. It was like all very useful, valid,
Yeah.
helpful advice coming from people's generosity and kindness, which
My people.
I believe stems from yourself, stems from you. Because those people
I
like-minded people, they seek out like-minded people, and you've got that about you, which it comes out, and it's like I say, things overflow from you from a good place, and that fosters that. And I've not seen a running community. I lived in Sydney for a while, and there's so many run clubs, but the clubs, the gatherings, they aren't communities in the way that I see them. Where what you've got, without even necessarily even wanting to do a run club, you've built a community who would probably absolutely buzz off it if there was one available.
mm. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I think the space I'm in, I was attracted to trail running and ultra running and the running world at large, but especially trail running and ultra running because of the community. I feel really like I've just slotted into an already very friendly, welcoming, helpful community and created a bit of a kind of space of people who resonate with my content um and then we're almost together. I feel like together we're creating a bit of an ethos, and I say that because Run the Runnable was for me. It was something that, like I just said, on an ultra. Um, I started saying to myself, "Run the Runnable, just run the Runnable," and it was like this great rule. I was like, "This is amazing! It's actually working a treat. I'm making great progress." It was when I felt like I was long into a race and I felt really tired. My legs I just really didn't want to ever run. Like I was much more comfortable walking than I was running. So I was like hiking the uphills, but then I knew I could technically run the flat section in front of me, but I was just like, I don't want to. So I just sort of made this rule that if it's runnable, you just run it. And I was doing that. And I did really well for myself in that race because because I was just being strict about that rule and I was doing what I could possibly, like what I was capable of doing. And I was running the runnable. And that's it, like everything in running, it's analogous to life. And people resonated with it. As I said it more and more, I realized there was some more depth to it, and people resonated with it a lot. And I put out a poll one day on a story and just said, "What does Run the Runnable mean to you?" Like I sort of said to them, I feel like we've come across something here that's a bit more than just running runnable segments of trails. There's something deeper here. So what does it mean to you? And I just had like hundreds of messages of people sort of explaining what it meant to them, like do the doable. It means finding what's controllable and focusing on that and not being overwhelmed by what you can't control. It means, defining your own version of what you can do. It's focusing on what you can do and being honest about doing it. It's all these things. And I was like, this is great. Run the Runnable is such a great mantra. And I think it's applicable to life. I think it's applicable to your running. It marries self-care with hard work and integrity about what you can do. We spoke earlier about kind of balancing the joy of fitness, but also actually pushing yourself. And that's what it is. It's like, is it runnable? Can you do it? Well, you do it. If you can, then you should. And yeah, that's where the brand is sort of has come from. So the brand That's Runnable is built on the mantra "Run the Runnable," and I think it's that ethos that yes, I have kind of built, but really I've built with the community. I only would have done it if it had resonated with people, and I felt like it really did resonate with people. And so yeah, it just does feel like we've got a little bit of a community going, and hopefully we can keep growing it. And the more it can grow, the more brands can get involved and offer value to people, like whether it's through discounts or helping with events or whatever. Ultimately none of it is possible without financial help, and so hopefully brands can get involved and believe in it and sponsor it and help put on events and help just make it a success, I guess. And yeah, I'm excited, man, because this is day 2 of me being self-employed as well. So um I had a wildly productive day yesterday. It's amazing how when you're actually suddenly full time doing something you actually enjoy, how productive you can be. Even the unenjoyable aspects of it are actually far more enjoyable. But when you've got a day job that you really don't like, what I've actually realized is that I never hated my job, never really hated it, but I didn't like it. Like and it was the best sales role I'd ever had, but really I dread it. Like you mentioned earlier, like that, I think you were talking about it in a different context, but you mentioned earlier like getting up and dreading having to get up. Like I really felt like that about my job. Like I really had Sunday scaries and Monday blues and whatever. Sunday blues and Monday morning was like I became good at overcoming that drudgery of going, but it was pretty miserable, like really. And you become used to that. I think if you're doing something that you're not really into, you get used to that way of being. Like, oh, that's just work. Everyone hates work. That's just it. But man, like feels like such a weight lifted to have
Being
to be in a position, as scary as it is to go on your own and all that stuff, to be in a position where I can actually say goodbye to something I ultimately didn't want to be doing. I especially didn't want to be doing it long into my life, and to commit all of my time and energy to something that I think has value and is exciting to me. Then you realize, oh, I'm way productive. I'm way more productive than I used to be. Because I want to be. Like I'm coming on a Sunday evening. I'm looking at my calendar. I'm sorting it out for the week because I want to be productive, calendarizing
yeah,
everything. And
you
I
found
could
that
have done that
joy.
at work. Yeah, I could have done that at work, and I sort of there had stints where I did, but it never lasted because I was just always like, oh, fuck this, I can't be bothered. And yeah, I don't want to like talk too negatively about my previous jobs because like they were great in many ways, but and they taught me a huge amount, but I wasn't finding any joy in it at all. So yeah, find the thing you love, produce in that space, and see where it takes you, I reckon.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I couldn't have said it better myself. It was something I couldn't deal with it. I left the UK on pretty much a permanent basis about 2 years ago. Just at the time, I was like, I had my own troubles, I had different things, and I did sales jobs like you have, and I know exactly how those sales jobs can be, where at times it feels just not what you're supposed to be doing. Is I couldn't deal with it, so I kind of just ran away for a bit. I didn't run at the time, but I did run away. I was just like, right, where can I go? What can I do whilst traveling? I want to go see the world, do all this, do all the things that you kind of think you have to do or want to do. And then it still just wasn't right. And it was about this time last year, actually, just leading up to my 25th birthday, now leading up to my 26th birthday. I had some time to myself and I was just thinking, what do I really, really want? Like at its core, what do I want? And I knew it from all the things I'd read and seen. I knew it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a particular job. It wasn't, I want to be a
Yeah,
footballer. I want to be a podcaster. I want to be a spokesperson. I want to be a business person. I want to be rich. I want to be athletic. Blah, 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 blah. It wasn't that. But I knew that I'd wanted that feeling of rapture as much as I could. It's not going to be forever. It's not going to be always. But I wanted to feel that I didn't have to set an alarm the night before because my body would wake me up because I'm excited to do the thing I want to do, whether it's difficult or whether it's not. And that's just just one thing that I just kept me going and going and going. And it's something that when people do find it, yourself included, what you're doing now, it's such an elevating feeling. It's religious and palpable in a way where you feel like, holy shit, I'm about to lift off floating because you've cracked the code. You're now doing something that you actually want to do every day, even if it's difficult. And
Yeah.
people get that from different things all over.
Sorry.
And it's okay.
Got a delivery, I think.
Do you need to pause?
Absolutely. No. I completely agree. I feel like there's just so much energy that you can gain from doing something you actually want to do. And the reality is, you know, all these like all these sort of entrepreneur gurus online, and they talk about like you've got 24 hours in a day, and you know you can do your 9 till 5, and then you know from 6 till 10 you've got all the hours to work on your side hustle. Let me tell you, as someone who has had a side hustle for the last 3 years, it doesn't work like that. What you're doing in your 9 to 5 is, yes, it's 8 hours, but it's draining you. So you're getting drained emotionally, and your energy levels are becoming low because it's not work that energizes you, it's work that drains you. So apart from the fact that you're spending 8 hours doing it and that's tiring, you feel drained. And so when you get home and you find the time outside of doing your washing, doing the dishes, cooking food, and everything else you need to do, when you do find that time, you're drained because you've been doing something that doesn't light you up, and so you're bringing half yourself to it. So I think what I am really excited about is the fact that what I am doing here today on this episode, and what I'm doing, you know, talking to brands, or you know, strategizing about what I'm trying to build, or writing the newsletter, or recording my own podcast, making content, all of that stuff lights me up. It's exciting. I love helping people. I love thinking of different topics we can speak about, and that's energizing to me. I could, you know, the risk really is that I spend too much time doing it because all I want to do is that. And so I find myself, it's 8 p.m., 9 p.m., I'm still working on it. I'm like, oh, whoops. It should really like, you know, I should really sort of put
I don't think
barriers
there's anything
on
wrong
how
with
much.
that.
Yeah, but I just like, I could
periods,
burn
not
myself out.
forever, but yeah.
100%, 100%. Yeah. There's no such thing as balance, but yeah, it should be the only thing that I need to be careful of is that I'm being too obsessed all the time with it because I love it. And but the reality is that now I've freed up 40, 50 hours of my week to actually just dedicate my time to this. I'm going to be not only bringing more time to it, I'm going to be bringing more energy to it. You know, it's from within me. It's like I care about it. And I was doing admin work last night, and it's similar, although I haven't got the full CRM that my company used to pay for. Is I'm creating my own little CRM, and it's essentially like a Kanban board, and I'm doing the admin and stuff that I used to put off in my work, like all the admin sort of, you know, filling in all the notes and the things you have to do. I would put that off and would hate to do it. I was excited doing it last night for all the different kind of partnerships and trying to strike. And it's exciting to me to think about the strategy for each one, the unique situation a certain brand is in, and what their strategy and interests are, and how I could propose something unique to them. And it's exciting to me. And all that stuff, that all the similar stuff I would have done in my previous job, I used to hate doing it, and now I'm doing it in this, and it's very similar, but it's my thing, it's my baby, it's something I care about. I want it to work. So yeah, it's a different kettle of fish when you find the thing. And I think everyone should work, what everyone should be working hardest at is finding the right work. Not, they shouldn't be working too hard at the wrong work. They should be working hard at finding the right work. Hard work is admirable, and hard work and integrity is admirable, and you should always show up. But don't waste your time on what you don't love, because you just won't have the time or energy for what you could realize you do love. And if you don't know what you love yet, then your whole mission now should be to figure out what that thing is. And if you find something that lights you up a little bit, then just start producing on the internet. in that space, whether it's a blog, a podcast, memes, whatever it is. Just start producing something, because yeah, start providing value in that space for free, and then I think it might turn into something. Maybe that's
Yeah.
what I did anyway. I don't know.
Well, it's worked for you, but it's something
It's
that
worth for me. I don't know.
I spent so long worrying about what it is I should be doing that I wasn't doing what I actually wanted to do. And it was a kind of a light bulb
Mm,
moment where I was like, I was in my head, I was thinking, should be working out, should be running, I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing this. And I'm kind of like picking apart and analyzing the parts of my life, and then realizing eventually that, hang on, it's all a part of my life.
yeah,
This analyzing of what I should be doing and stressing
yeah,
about not doing the right things is now becoming my life. It's not fixing my life. And it's the same thing with a different job, that you say like the perils of like a side hustle, like you were saying. It's like it's nothing like you'd think it is. It's not like, oh yeah, you've got extra 3 hours in the day, you've just got to wake up at 4:30 a.m. and blah 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 blah. It's like, no, because if the bulk of your day is spent on one thing, you will become more like that thing. It's
yeah,
not. It's like the rule of the average of the friends you spend your time with. It's like that, but not for people, for who you are and what you're doing.
yeah. No, I
And
think you
I
said
found it.
something. Sorry,
Go on.
cut you off there. I was just saying.
I was
I
pretty
think
much done.
I think you just said something really interesting there. I think with the whole kind of like ought to and should, and thinking about what you should be doing, um, what came to mind is like people constantly thinking that they're not currently in the right place, so they don't currently have the dream job, or that next opportunity isn't current. It's not like the perfect thing or whatever, but it's all part of the journey. Like, I've had plenty of jobs that haven't been the right thing, but I'm grateful for each one of them. I tried to enter the fitness space 4 years ago and became a personal trainer and running coach, and tried to do that thing, and it failed, and I came back into a commercial world and thought I'd never re-enter. I didn't know. But now I'm like, it was so helpful for me to go through that journey, because had I not gone through that, I probably never would have started to make content. I started to make content because I needed clients for my personal training. And then I realized that actually it was a great creative outlet and all this sort of stuff. Everything can have its reasons for being there. And you can use everything you do to create reasons for it being there. And everything you do, you'll learn from it. The only thing that you should avoid is inaction. If you're not currently doing something, if you're just thinking about what you could be doing, you're constantly just like, oh, maybe this, and theorizing about maybe this and maybe this and maybe that's what I want to do. Just start doing something, because there's no substitute for actual experience. Like, there's theory and there's experience, and experience always trumps theory in every space. And if you can just accept the fact that, yeah, you might not be in the right place now, but it's giving you a lot of value because you're learning what you're currently learning, and you won't get to where you want to be without going through what you're currently going through. So it's all part of it. And I think too much. I do think too much with, and I fall into this trap all the time. Everyone does. We're constantly thinking about where we want to be in the future and what we want to have in the future, and obviously forgetting what we currently have, and appreciating what the current situation is. And I'm always having to remind myself of reasons why I don't hate London, because I've got a love-hate relationship with it. It's been great for me, but it's a difficult place to live a lot of the time. But I'm constantly having to remind myself what I love about it. Even as I'm out on my runs, going through, and all the leaves are on the floor in Highbury, and it's like really nice, and I'm trying to appreciate that. And plenty of cute dogs walking around North London, and like appreciating that. And there's a little coffee spot that is new, and excited about this new coffee spot, or just loads of stuff that you're like, these are things that I enjoy now about this current situation. Or my previous job, there was plenty to be grateful for. And I have to say, in the 2 years I worked there, I never took it for granted. Although there were many things that I didn't like about the job and the role itself, so much about the company that was unbelievable. in terms of what it provided us. So plenty of things to be grateful for. We should be grateful for the work we get to do rather than just thinking, oh, it's not the right thing. Not everyone gets, not everyone has the privilege of even having choice over a job. So yeah, I think it's a fine balance. We should always be striving, but always be kind of content. I always actually say this in the context of running races. I always say, always content, never satisfied. And I don't know if it resonates with everyone. I don't think people necessarily get it as much as me. I made it up myself, but it makes sense to me. It's like I'm content, I'm happy with what I have, but I'm never satisfied, because if I was satisfied, I wouldn't strive for anything more. And I think progress is really where we find the most happiness and satisfaction. If we are progressing in some way, if we're moving forward, then I think that's the aim, really. Just always be progressing.
Yeah, it's a common thread which I've noticed throughout a lot of the things you produce, whether you know it or not, is that growth mindset, which I know from being in sales myself for years, and I'd worked with children and as a coach for years as well. It's within those professions, within sales in particular, you're thrown rejection at you every single day, but it is your job to get past that rejection. And you're saying just how learning to appreciate things and what you can gain from that for yourself, and how each step along the journey leads you to where you need to be or where you are now. And that's part of it. And that's something you don't get from a lot of jobs. A lot of people haven't got that. Like we talked about it earlier with the running, about not pushing themselves. But it's when you have done it and been rejected enough, and when you've had to tweak what you're doing, and you've had to essentially disassociate the negativity that is around you from yourself. You can't pin it on yourself. You can't blame yourself. All you can do is see how you are now and approach it differently. And I'm a massive fault of forgetting that a lot of the time. And it takes conversations like these for me and different hardships in my life to realize that. And it's something I feel a lot of people gain from what you say, because it flows from you. Like I say, it flows from you, that growth mindset of it's not about pushing yourself. It's about seeing things how they actually are, which you wouldn't be able to share if you didn't believe it. And that's come from, I believe, your journey. And it's part of a journey that everybody's on.
I appreciate that, man. I think we all think, I don't know, we all think we see things how they actually are, don't we? But
For us.
yeah, I think it's dangerous to be convinced that you see things how they actually are, because you probably don't, to be honest. You don't see the full picture. So many times where I have been convinced by something, and then have just been enlightened by someone else's perspective, and then been like, whoa, yeah, actually completely wrong about that. And so yeah, it's always important to, yeah, it's also with business as well. Like I have this idea of what I'm trying to create, and sometimes you're kind of scared. Like I just got a text from like my old CEO of a really early stage startup that we're in. We're still close. We're still sort of talking. He said, so tell me, what's the master plan? And I just know he's going to scrutinize it. I just know he's going to tell me all the holes in it, which is what I need, but I don't want, because I'm married to my own idea that this is going to work and this is right. And, you know, really you should be scrutinized and challenged about everything. And so I will reluctantly tell him my master plan, and he will inevitably tell me all the holes that are in it. Or at least he'll ask me questions that I haven't asked myself, which might, I might then be confronted with having to change this plan, which is always hard for people to do and admit, but better to do early stage than too far down the road, right? Yeah.
He sounds like a good friend.
He's good. He's a good mentor.
If what you have got planned goes as well and is is as beneficial as what you've already done, I cannot wait to see it. So thank you for what you've done and
Appreciate
what
it,
you're
man.
continuing to do. Just thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being on.
Have you got any final words that you'd like to say or to share?
I'm not an alcoholic, I promise.